When worlds collide, the universe trembles. Across the cold void of imperial space, a tear in reality brings forth a being unlike any the galaxy has known, a man with powers that rival the Force itself. The steady hum of star destroyers falls silent as officers witness his impossible survival in the vacuum. Not Jedi, not Sith, something far more dangerous. In a galaxy ruled by fear, what happens when the most feared being from another universe decides the Empire itself should kneel? The hyperdrive matrix fractured. Reality split across the void. In the shipyards of Kuat, workers paused as atmosphere sensors triggered emergency protocols. Something had torn through the fabric of hyperspace itself, leaving a wound in the sky that bled crimson and gold. Imperial officers raised their viewfinders toward the anomaly, their expressions shifting from alarm to confusion as a humanoid figure hovered within the nexus of energy. He wore no breathing apparatus, no protective suit, only a gleaming white uniform with a crimson cape that billowed in the vacuum of space. His eyes burned with an unnatural blue light. The Empire had seen many things in its conquest of the galaxy, but nothing like this. Grand Moff Adras Valen observed from the bridge of his star destroyer, the inevitable. His thin lips pressed into a calculating line as he studied the impossibility before him. The figure showed no signs of distress despite the vacuum. No Force user he knew of could survive the cold emptiness of space without technology. This was something new, something useful. "Bring him in," Valen ordered, his voice carrying the cultured accent of Imperial Center. "Containment Protocols Alpha. And alert Lord Vader that we may have found something of interest." The tractor beam locked onto the stranger, drawing him toward the hangar bay. The man made no attempt to resist, instead regarding the massive warship with what appeared to be curiosity or perhaps amusement. Imperial technicians scrambled to prepare containment fields, while stormtroopers formed defensive positions. Whatever this being was, the Empire would bend it to its will. Such was the way of things under Emperor Palpatine's new order. 5 years after the Battle of Yavin, the rebellion had struck a devastating blow against the Empire with the destruction of the Death Star, but the Imperial war machine ground on, tightening its grip across the galaxy. In the shadows of this conflict, darker things stirred, ancient powers awakened, the Force trembled with warning. In the hangar bay of the inevitable, Homelander's boots touched the polished deck with perfect grace. Stormtroopers surrounded him, blaster rifles raised. He smiled, a practiced expression that never reached his eyes. These soldiers in their pristine white armor reminded him of toy soldiers, fragile and disposable. The thought pleased him. "I must say, your welcoming committee needs work," Homelander said, his voice carrying an easy confidence that bordered on contempt. "Where I come from, people know to kneel." The stormtrooper captain stepped forward. "You will identify yourself and explain your presence in restricted Imperial space." Homelander's smile widened. "I'm Homelander, and I go wherever I want." His eyes flashed crimson. Heat vision lanced out, slicing through the captain's chest like paper. The trooper collapsed without a sound. The remaining soldiers opened fire, their blaster bolts striking Homelander's chest and dissipating harmlessly against his skin. He moved with supernatural speed, a blur of white and red. Each punch shattered armor and the bodies beneath. Each soldier that fell only heightened his sense of power, of rightness. This was how things should be, him above, all others below. When the last stormtrooper fell, Homelander stood amid the carnage, not a mark on his immaculate uniform. From behind a containment shield, Grand Moff Valen watched with clinical interest. What might have horrified others fascinated him. Such power could reshape the galaxy if properly controlled, and control was what the Empire did best. "Impressive demonstration," Valen said, stepping into view as the containment shield lowered. His grey uniform bore the insignia of the highest Imperial command, though somewhat excessive for beings who were no threat to you. Homelander turned, studying the older man with predatory assessment. "They pointed weapons at me. Where I come from, that makes them threats." He glanced around the hangar bay. taking in the scale of the Star Destroyer. "Nice ship, bigger than anything we have back home." "You are no longer home, as you've surely realized," Valin replied, keeping his tone even. Years of imperial politics had taught him how to address dangerous beings without revealing fear. "You've arrived in the Galactic Empire, the rightful governing authority of this galaxy. I am Grand Moff Adras Valin, regional governor of the Kuat sector and overseer of imperial shipyard operations." "A galaxy, huh?" Homelander's eyes gleamed with interest. "And you're what? Some kind of manager?" Valin stiffened slightly. "I answer directly to Emperor Palpatine himself. The power I wield shapes the fate of thousands of star systems." "Thousands of systems," Homelander repeated, circling Valin slowly. "Sounds like a lot of people who should be grateful for protection. People who need a symbol to look up to." Valin recognized the hunger in those words. This being craved adoration as much as power. Useful information, indeed. "The Empire maintains order through strength and loyalty. Your abilities could be of great service to our cause. The Emperor rewards those who serve him well." "And if I'm not interested in serving?" Homelander asked, his voice deceptively light. Valin smiled thinly. "Then you would find yourself very alone in an unfamiliar galaxy, pursued by forces beyond even your evident capabilities." He gestured toward a corridor. "But let us not begin with threats. Come, I will show you what the Empire can offer someone of your unique talents." As they walked through the Star Destroyer's corridors, Homelander observed everything with keen interest. Crew members snapped to attention at Valin's approach, their fear evident beneath their disciplined exteriors. Fear was something Homelander understood intimately. It was the foundation upon which his power had always rested. "Your people seem well trained," Homelander remarked. "The Empire demands absolute loyalty," Valin replied. "Those who cannot provide it are removed." They entered a strategic command center where holographic displays showed star systems, fleet movements, and battle reports. Valin gestured toward the largest display, showing a sector map dominated by Imperial symbols. "We are engaged in a struggle against terrorist elements who call themselves the Rebellion," Valin explained. "Despite our superior numbers and technology, these insurgents persist through guerrilla tactics and the aid of certain individuals with unusual abilities." Homelander raised an eyebrow. "Abilities like mine?" "No," Valin said carefully. "Nothing so straightforward as your raw power. These individuals tap into what we call the Force, an energy field that connects all living things. The most powerful among them, the Jedi, were once peacekeepers of the Old Republic before they turned against the government. Most were eliminated years ago, but some survived and now aid the rebellion." "Jedi," Homelander tasted the unfamiliar word. "And what can these Jedi do?" "They manipulate objects with their minds, enhance their physical abilities. Some can even influence the weak-minded." Valin studied Homelander's reaction. "But they have weaknesses. Their power requires focus and training. They tire, they bleed, they die." Homelander smiled. "Unlike me." "Yes," Valin agreed. "Unlike you." He activated another holographic display. "Our intelligence suggests that a Jedi Knight has been tracking Imperial operations along the Hydian Way. Several facilities have reported unusual breaches before all contact was lost. The pattern suggests a single operative with Force abilities." "And you want me to kill this Jedi?" Homelander concluded. "Capture, if possible," Valin corrected. "The Emperor has special interest in Force users. But yes, elimination is preferable to escape." He deactivated the display. "Consider it a test of your abilities. Succeed, and the resources of the Empire will be at your disposal." Homelander considered the offer. A new world with new rules, but the same old game: power, control, adoration. He could work with that. For now. "I'll need transportation," he said. "Already arranged," Valin replied, satisfied. "An Imperial shuttle with a pilot awaits your command." The most recent Jedi sighting was at our facility on Botajef. Homelander nodded. Then Botajef it is. Across the galaxy, Jedi Knight Shira Kal knelt in meditation aboard her modified light freighter. The ship drifted in the shadow of a nameless moon, systems powered down to avoid detection. Shira had once been a Padawan at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, studying under Master Kirak Infilla when Order 66 was executed. She had survived by chance, away on a training mission when the clones turned on their Jedi generals. For years after, she had hidden, suppressing her connection to the Force to avoid detection by the Emperor's hunters. But the Force had called to her again after the destruction of the Death Star. A beacon of hope had ignited, and now she served the rebellion, using her abilities to gather intelligence and sabotage Imperial operations. Her latest mission had led her to discover something disturbing. Imperial facilities along the Hydian Way had been conducting experiments attempting to artificially induce Force sensitivity in subjects. Most had died horribly, their bodies rejecting the invasive procedures. She had liberated what data she could and destroyed the laboratories, but her investigation had revealed that the program extended to other facilities. Botajef was next on her list. An Imperial weapons research station there had received subjects and equipment from the program. Whatever the Empire was attempting, it had to be stopped. The Force was not something to be manipulated through technology and cruelty. Shira opened her eyes, her meditation complete. The Force flowed through her, bringing clarity and purpose. She was not the Jedi she might have become under the guidance of the Old Order, but she carried its legacy nonetheless. Peace was her goal, even as violence became her means. She moved to the cockpit, activating the ship's systems. The navicomputer calculated the jump to Botajef as the engines hummed to life. Stars stretched into the blue tunnel of hyperspace, carrying her toward a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy in ways she could not yet imagine. The Imperial facility on Botajef squatted like a gray tumor against the planet's verdant landscape. Security turrets tracked the approach of the Lambda-class shuttle as it descended toward the landing pad. Inside the shuttle, Homelander sat with arms crossed, already bored with the journey. The pilot, a nervous lieutenant, had attempted conversation earlier only to be silenced by a withering stare. "Sir," the pilot said cautiously, "we've been cleared for landing. Facility Commander Roth will meet you on arrival." Homelander nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. This galaxy was vast beyond anything he had known before. Thousands of inhabited worlds, countless beings to rule over. The Empire had laid the groundwork, creating a structure of fear and control that suited his purposes perfectly. But Valin and his Emperor were obstacles. Rulers who would expect his obedience rather than their worship, that would need to change. The shuttle touched down with a gentle lurch. Homelander rose, straightening his cape with practiced precision. Image was everything. These Imperials responded to symbols and displays of power. He would give them a symbol to remember. Commander Routh waited at the base of the landing ramp, flanked by a squad of stormtroopers. He was a square-jawed man with the hard eyes of someone accustomed to giving unpleasant orders. "Welcome to Botajef Research Station," Routh said, offering a stiff bow. "Grand Moff Valin informed us of your arrival. We have prepared quarters for you and a full briefing on facility security." Homelander descended the ramp with measured steps. "I'm not here for a tour, Commander. I'm here to catch a Jedi." Roth's expression tightened. "Of course, we have increased patrols and activated all security protocols. If the Jedi attempts infiltration, we'll be ready." "No," Homelander said with a dismissive wave. "You won't be ready. But I will." He looked around, taking in the facility's layout. "Tell me about your research here. What would interest a Jedi enough to risk capture?" Routh hesitated. "That information is classified at the highest levels." Homelander moved closer, invading the commander's personal space. "I have Valin's authority, and more importantly, I have mine." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Don't make me ask again." "We're conducting experimentation on kyber crystals," Roth admitted, sweat beading on his forehead, attempting to synthesize and amplify their properties for weapons development. Kyber crystals, Homelander repeated. Explain. They're force-conductive crystals. The Jedi once used them to power their lightsabers. Our research indicates they can be modified to channel energy on a much larger scale. Homelander nodded, filing the information away. Show me. Routh led Homelander through the facility's sterile corridors to a heavily secured laboratory. Inside, scientists worked at various stations surrounding a central containment unit. Within it, crystals of various sizes glowed with an inner light, pulsing in strange harmony. The crystals are semi-sentient, Routh explained. They respond to force energy, forming bonds with force-sensitive individuals. We've been attempting to replicate that connection artificially. For weapons, Homelander said, watching the crystals pulse. Yes. The Death Star's main weapon utilized Kyber crystals, but on a scale that required tremendous resources to obtain. We're looking for more efficient applications. Homelander approached the containment unit, placing his hand against the transparent barrier. The crystals reacted, their glow intensifying. The scientists exchanged worried glances. Interesting, Homelander murmured. They recognize power, even if it's not their precious force. Sir, one of the scientists ventured, the crystal's behavior suggests they're responding to you as they would to a force user. Would you consent to some tests? Homelander turned, his smile predatory. I don't take tests, I give them. He looked back at the fair, crystals. But I'm curious, what happens if I touch one? We don't advise, the scientist began, but Homelander had already pressed his hand against the access panel. The containment field deactivated with a low hum. Routh stepped forward. Sir, protocols require. I'm establishing a new protocol. Homelander interrupted, reaching for a crystal that pulsed with crimson energy. It's called Do What I Want. His fingers closed around the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal flared with blinding intensity. Homelander gasped as energy surged through him, not painful, but strange and invasive. Voices whispered at the edges of his consciousness. The crystal vibrated in his grasp, its color shifting from red to a deep, bloody crimson. When the light faded, Homelander stood motionless, the crystal clutched in his fist. His eyes had taken on the same crimson glow as the crystal. Sir? Roth ventured. Homelander looked at his hand, opening his fingers to reveal the crystal. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat now, bound to him in some fundamental way. I can feel it, he said softly. Like it's part of me now. The scientist approached cautiously. The crystal appears to have bonded with you, similar to how they bond with force users. This is unprecedented for a non-force sensitive individual. Who said I'm not force sensitive? Homelander asked, his voice carrying an edge of new power. He closed his fist around the crystal again, and energy crackled across his skin. Maybe the Force knows quality when it sees it. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Roth activated his comlink. Report. Perimeter breach in Sector 7, a voice responded. Security cameras disabled. Possible Jedi infiltration. Homelander smiled, slipping the crystal into a pocket of his uniform. Perfect timing. Continue your work, Commander. I'll handle our guest. He strode from the laboratory, cape billowing behind him. This would be his first real test. In this new galaxy, a demonstration of power that would show the Empire exactly what they were dealing with. And if these Jedi were as formidable as the Imperials feared, it would make crushing one all the sweeter. Shira Kal moved through the shadows of the Imperial facility with practiced stealth. Years of surviving as a hunted Jedi had taught her patience and caution. The Force guided her movements, alerting her to the positions of stormtrooper patrols and security systems. She had disabled the perimeter sensors and entered through a maintenance shaft, but the facility's internal security was more robust than expected. Her lightsaber remained clipped to her belt, a last resort. Violence would come if necessary, but information was her primary objective. The data she had gathered from other facilities pointed to Botajef as a major hub for the Empire's kyber crystal experiments. If she could access their central database, the rebellion would have a complete picture of the program and perhaps a way to counteract it. Shira paused at an intersection, extending her senses through the Force. Something felt wrong. A disturbance she had never encountered before, not the cold vacuum that signaled a dark side user, but something alien and discordant. It reminded her of the sensation she had felt when examining corrupted kyber crystals that had been bled for Sith use, but magnified and twisted into something new. She changed direction, moving toward the disturbance rather than away from it. Whatever it was, it represented a threat that needed to be understood. The Force guided her through service corridors and ventilation shafts until she emerged into a deserted hallway near the central laboratory complex. The disturbance was stronger now, pulsing with raw power and something else hunger. Not physical hunger, but a desperate, consuming need for acknowledgement and adoration. Shira had felt echoes of such emotions in fallen Jedi who had been seduced by the dark side's promise of power, but never with this intensity. She reached out with the Force, attempting to understand the nature of what she faced. The contact was brief, but shocking, like touching a live wire. Anger, superiority, and beneath it all, a profound emptiness. Whatever this presence was, it was dangerous in ways that extended beyond mere physical threat. Shira drew her lightsaber but did not ignite it. The corridor ahead led to a large open area, some kind of testing chamber, according to the facility schematics she had memorized. The disturbance centered there, waiting. It knew she was coming. It was a trap, obviously, but sometimes the only way forward was through. Shira took a breath, centering herself in the Force. Then she stepped into the open chamber. The room was vast, with a high ceiling and various pieces of testing equipment arranged around its perimeter. In the center stood a man in white and red, his posture radiating confidence and anticipation. His blonde hair and chiseled features might have been handsome if not for the cold calculation in his eyes. "The famous Jedi," the man said, his voice carrying easily across the space between them. "I expected something more impressive." Shira assessed him quickly. Not an Inquisitor, his uniform didn't match their aesthetic. Not a common Imperial either. Something new, then. "And you are?" "Homelander," he replied with a slight bow that mocked the gesture's respectfulness. "The new face of Imperial security. The Grand Moff sent me specially to deal with you." Shira felt the kyber crystal's resonance before she saw it. Homelander reached into his pocket and withdrew a crystal that pulsed with corrupted energy. It had bonded with him somehow, though he showed no signs of Force sensitivity she could detect. "Interesting toy you've found," she said, nodding toward the crystal. "Do you understand what it is?" "Power," Homelander said simply, "the same as everything else worth having." He closed his fist around the crystal, and it flared with crimson light that seemed to flow into him. "Your kind hoarded these for generations, didn't they? Keeping them for your exclusive little club." "The Jedi were guardians, not hoarders," Shira corrected. "Kyber crystals choose their wielders. They're semi-sentient, attuned to the Force." "Well, this one chose me," Homelander said, his eyes beginning to glow with the same crimson light as the crystal. "And I'm not even one of your Force users." "What do you think that means?" "It means the crystal has been corrupted," Shira said, igniting her lightsaber. The blue blade hummed to life, casting its light across the chamber. "Just as you're being corrupted by it now," Homelander laughed. "Corrupted? I'm being enhanced." He pocketed the crystal again, but the glow in his eyes remained. "Let me show you." He moved with blinding speed, crossing the distance between them in an instant. Shira barely had time to raise her lightsaber in defense before his fist connected with the blade. To her shock, the lightsaber did not cut through his flesh. Instead, his knuckles struck the energy beam with a shower of sparks, driving her backward. Shira recovered quickly, using the Force to stabilize herself. This was impossible. Nothing could block a lightsaber blade directly, not even the armor of Mandalorians. Yet this man had done so with his bare hand. Surprised? Homelander asked, examining his unmarked knuckles. Nothing on my world could cut me either. Looks like your laser sword isn't as special as you thought. He charged again. She-Ra leapt high, using the force to carry her over his head. She slashed downward as she passed, aiming for his shoulder. The lightsaber connected, but only scorched his cape rather than cutting through. Homelander spun, eyes flaring. Twin beams of intense heat erupted from his gaze, slicing through the air toward She-Ra. She deflected one beam with her lightsaber, but the second grazed her arm, burning through her tunic and searing the flesh beneath. She landed awkwardly, pain lancing through her. Heat vision, Homelander explained casually. One of my many talents. Along with flight, super strength, invulnerability, enhanced senses. He rose into the air, hovering several meters above the floor. I'm basically a god compared to you. She-Ra centered herself, pushing the pain aside. There are no gods, she said calmly. Only the Force. She reached out with her free hand, using the Force to pull a large piece of testing equipment from the wall. It hurtled toward Homelander, who made no move to avoid it. The impact was thunderous, but when the dust cleared, he remained hovering, unharmed. Is that it? He asked, sounding disappointed. Throwing things? I thought Jedi was supposed to be special. She-Ra didn't waste breath on a reply. Instead, she closed her eyes, deepening her connection to the Force. The Kyber crystal in Homelander's pocket had responded to him, but it was still a conduit for the Force. Perhaps it could be turned against him. She reached out, not toward Homelander himself, but toward the crystal he carried. Its corrupted resonance was difficult to grasp, like trying to hold oil with bare hands. But the Force was in all things, even those twisted by darkness. Homelander felt the crystal grow hot in his pocket. His expression shifted from confidence to confusion as it began to vibrate violently. What are you? The crystal exploded with Force energy, not enough to harm him physically but sufficient to disrupt the connection it had formed. Homelander cried out as the power that had been flowing into him suddenly reversed direction, draining him instead. He dropped to one knee, his crimson gaze flickering. She-Ra pressed her advantage, leaping forward with lightsaber extended. The blade struck his chest and, though it still didn't penetrate, the impact drove him backward into the wall. The structure cracked under the force of the collision. Homelander rose, anger replacing his earlier amusement. That hurt, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. No one hurts me. He moved with renewed purpose, no longer toying with her but intent on destruction. His fist connected with She-Ra's hastily raised lightsaber hilt, sending the weapon spinning from her grasp. His second blow caught her in the stomach, carefully modulated to injure rather than kill. Still, the impact lifted her off her feet and sent her crashing into a control panel. Pain exploded through She-Ra's body. Ribs cracked, internal injuries flared with each breath. She had faced Inquisitors before, even dueled with a dark Jedi who had fallen to the Emperor's service, but never encountered such raw physical power. The Force allowed her to absorb and redirect some of the damage, but her limits were being rapidly reached. Homelander stalked toward her, his steps measured and deliberate. I could kill you with a flick of my finger, he said. But the Grand Moff wants you, alive if possible. Something about the Emperor having special interests in Jedi. She-Ra pulled herself up, one hand pressed against her injured side. The Emperor will destroy you once you've served your purpose, she warned. That's what he does to all his tools. Tools? Homelander laughed. Homelander laughed. You think that's what I am? He gestured to himself, to his pristine uniform and the symbol emblazoned on his chest. I'm not a tool, I'm an icon, a symbol. Where I come from, people worship me. Worship built on fear isn't worship, She-Ra countered. It's just another form of slavery. Something flickered in Homelander's eyes, a nerve struck. They love me, he insisted, his voice hardening. They need me. Is that what you tell yourself? Shira pressed, recognizing the weakness. That their fear is love? That their need for protection justifies whatever you do to them? Homelander closed the distance between them with frightening speed, seizing her by the throat and lifting her off the ground. You don't understand anything about me, he snarled, his grip tightening. No one does. Shira couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, but she didn't need to. Through their physical contact, she opened herself fully to the Force, allowing it to flow through her and into Homelander, not as an attack, but as understanding. In that moment of connection, she saw him, truly saw him. The abandoned child, the laboratory creation, the manufactured hero with no genuine connections, the desperate need for adoration masking an emptiness that nothing could fill, and he felt her seeing him. The compassion in her gaze burned worse than any weapon. With a cry of rage, he hurled her across the room. Shira slammed into the far wall and crumpled to the floor, consciousness fading. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Homelander standing amid the destruction, the perfect image of power and utterly alone. Commander Roth entered the testing chamber, surveying the destruction with a wince. Structural damage, equipment losses, not to mention the potential information breach. His report to Grand Moff Valin would require careful wording to avoid responsibility for this disaster. Sir, he addressed Homelander cautiously. You've captured the Jedi. Congratulations. Homelander didn't respond immediately, his attention fixed on the unconscious woman. Something about their encounter had unsettled him, though he would never admit it. Have her secured for transport back to the Inevitable, he ordered finally. Maximum restraints. She's more dangerous than she looks. Yes, sir, Roth gestured, and a squad of stormtroopers moved forward with restraints specifically designed for Force users. The Grand Moff will be pleased. I don't care about his pleasure, Homelander said coldly. Just get it done. As the stormtroopers secured Shira, attaching neural disruptors to prevent her from using the Force, Homelander withdrew the Kyber crystal from his pocket. It had cracked during their confrontation, but still pulsed with energy. The connection had been disrupted but not broken. He could feel it calling to him, offering power that even he had never wielded before. This galaxy had its Emperor, its Sith, its Jedi, all wielding power through this mystical force. But none of them had what he possessed. Power that was innate, that required no external source or mystical connection. Combined with the crystal's energy, he would be unstoppable. Not a tool of the Empire, but its master. First, though, he needed to understand more about this force, about the Kyber crystals, about the structures of power in this new galaxy. The Jedi would provide those answers, willingly or not, and then decisions would be made about who truly deserved to rule. Homelander watched as Shira was carried away, her lightsaber now in his possession. He ignited it experimentally, watching the blue energy blade hum to life. Such an elegant weapon, limited only by the human wielding it. In his hands, what couldn't it accomplish? He deactivated the saber and clipped it to his belt alongside the damaged crystal. Tools for later use. The first step in building something new. Prepare my shuttle, he commanded. I'm returning to the Inevitable with the prisoner. As the facility staff rushed to comply, Homelander looked out through a viewport at the stars beyond. Thousands of systems. Billions of beings who had never heard his name, never seen his face, never knelt in his presence. That would change. Soon. Aboard the Star Destroyer Inevitable, Grand Moff Valin received the news of Homelander's success with measured satisfaction. The capture of a Jedi Knight was significant. Such prizes were normally reserved for Lord Vader himself or the Inquisitorius. That this outsider had accomplished it on his first mission confirmed Valin's initial assessment of his value. Bring them directly to Detention Block AA-23, Valin instructed the bridge officer. Security protocols, Gamma for the Jedi, and prepare the interrogation chamber. Yes, sir, the officer acknowledged. And Homelander, escort him to my private chambers upon arrival. I wish to debrief him personally. The officer saluted and departed to carry out his orders. Valin turned to the viewport, watching the stars with the calculating gaze of a man accustomed to power and its management. Homelander represented both opportunity and threat, a weapon of tremendous potential that might prove difficult to control. The Emperor would want to know of him immediately, but Valen hesitated to make that report just yet. Better to understand the full extent of Homelander's abilities first, to present the Emperor with complete information and a strategy for utilization. And if Homelander proved uncontrollable? Well, even the most powerful beings had weaknesses. It was simply a matter of identifying them. Homelander's shuttle docked with the inevitable 4 hours later. Stormtroopers transferred the still unconscious Jedi to the detention block, while Homelander was escorted to Valen's chambers as ordered. He went without protest, though his expression suggested he found the summons tedious rather than obligatory. Valen's private chambers reflected his status, spacious by Starship standards, with furnishings of actual wood and stone imported from Imperial Center. Military precision dominated the aesthetic, every item placed with deliberate intent. "Your mission was a success," Valen said as Homelander entered, not rising from behind his desk. "The Jedi has been secured. Did you expect anything less?" Homelander asked, helping himself to a seat without invitation. He placed Shira's lightsaber on the desk between them, a trophy. Valen regarded the weapon with interest. "Impressive. The weapon of a Jedi Knight is not easily taken. She wasn't as tough as advertised," Homelander said with deliberate casualness. "Your Empire seems to fear these Jedi unnecessarily." "The Emperor's concerns are never unnecessary," Valen corrected, his tone sharpening slightly. "The Jedi represent more than merely physical threat. Their ideology persists even after most of their order has been eliminated." "Ideology?" Homelander scoffed. "In my experience, ideologies crumble when faced with superior force." "Perhaps in your world," Valen allowed, "but you have much to learn about ours." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "The report from Commander Roth indicates you took possession of a kyber crystal during the confrontation." "May I see it?" Homelander hesitated, then withdrew the cracked crystal from his pocket. "It responded to me. Bonded somehow." He placed it beside the lightsaber, the two objects creating a strange harmony on the polished surface of the desk. "Your scientists seemed surprised by that." "With good reason," Valen said, studying the crystal without touching it. "Kyber crystals typically respond only to force-sensitive individuals. Their attunement to you suggests possibilities we had not considered." He looked up at Homelander with renewed interest. "Perhaps the power you wield in your world translates to force sensitivity in ours." "Does it matter?" Homelander asked. "Power is power, regardless of its source." "Source determines limitation," Valen replied. "And limitation must be understood to be overcome." He gestured to the crystal. "This particular specimen has been damaged, but others exist. With further testing, we might enhance your already considerable abilities." Homelander leaned back, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Now that sounds interesting. What kind of enhancement are we talking about?" "The Force pervades all things in this galaxy," Valen explained. "Those sensitive to it can manipulate matter, perceive events at great distances, even influence the thoughts of others. Kyber crystals amplify these abilities. In the hands of someone with your unique physiology, the possibilities are significant." "And what does the Empire get out of enhancing me further?" "Your service," Valen said simply. "Your loyalty. Your effectiveness as a weapon against our enemies." "A weapon," Homelander repeated, his smile never reaching his eyes. "That's all anyone ever sees." Valen recognized the dangerous undercurrent in those words. "A weapon," he agreed, "but also a symbol. The Empire understands the power of symbols, of figures who inspire both fear and devotion. Lord Vader serves this purpose, but his methods are often excessive. You could represent a new face of Imperial power, one that the citizens might actually cheer for rather than cower before. That caught Homelander's interest, as Valen had known it would. The adoring public, he mused. I do miss that aspect of my former life. It can be yours again, Valen promised, on a scale you've never imagined. Thousands of worlds, trillions of beings, all looking to you as their protector. Homelander considered, this greed and calculation evident in his expression. I'd need certain guarantees, autonomy, resources, public appearances carefully managed for maximum impact. All possible, Valen assured him. But first, a demonstration of your commitment is required. The Jedi prisoner holds valuable information about rebellion activities and Force user sanctuaries. Extract this information, and the path to everything you desire will be open. Torture? Homelander asked, sounding almost disappointed. That's crude and unnecessary. Not torture, Valen corrected. Interrogation. The difference is purpose and precision. Homelander stood, retrieving both the lightsaber and the crystal. I'll speak with her. But my way. He moved toward the door. Your empire has its methods, I have mine. Valen watched him go, already composing in his mind the report he would send to the Emperor. A powerful new asset acquired, potentially unstable, but manageable with the right incentives. Useful in the lay, short term at minimum, possibly transformative in the long term with proper handling. What he didn't include, even in his thoughts, was the contingency plan already taking shape. Some weapons were too dangerous to keep once their immediate purpose was served. The Emperor would understand this without it needing to be stated explicitly. After all, there could only be two Sith, and while Homelander was not Sith, power was power, as he himself had said. The Empire had eliminated the Jedi Order at the height of their influence. One man, however powerful, could be managed when the time came. But first, he would serve. In the detention block, Shira Kal regained consciousness slowly, fighting through layers of pain and disorientation. The neural disruptors attached to her temples disrupted her connection to the Force, leaving her mind foggy and her senses dulled. She recognized the feeling from stories told by Jedi who had survived Imperial captivity force-blocking technology. Cruel but effective. She took stock of her situation. Cell, restraint field holding her upright. 2 stormtrooper guards visible through the energy shield that served as a door. Internal injuries from her confrontation with Homelander, partially healed through the Force before her capture but still significant. The situation was grim, but not yet hopeless. The Force remained, even if her access to it was impaired. And where there was the Force, there was possibility. The energy shield deactivated, and Homelander stepped into the cell. He had dispensed with the cape, but otherwise looked exactly as he had during their battle, not a hair out of place, uniform pristine. He dismissed the guards with a casual wave. "You're tougher than you look," he said, studying her with clinical interest. "Most people don't survive a direct hit from me." "I'm not most people," Shira replied, her voice hoarse but steady. "No, you're a Jedi." "Whatever that really means," he circled her slowly. "The Empire wants information from you. Rebel bases, other Jedi in hiding. The usual stuff that people in your position are supposed to protect until death." "Then you're wasting your time," Shira said. "I won't betray the rebellion or the Jedi, no matter what you do to me." Homelander smiled. "See, that's the part I find fascinating. This willingness to suffer and die for a cause." He stopped in front of her, meeting her gaze. "Where I come from, people say they die for what they believe in, but they don't really mean it. When push comes to shove, survival instinct kicks in. Pain changes priorities." "Pain is temporary," Shira said. "The Force is eternal." "That's what I want to understand," Homelander replied, surprising her with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "This Force, what makes it inspire such loyalty, such willingness to sacrifice?" He withdrew the Kyber crystal, now held in a small containment field. "This little rock responded to me. Your Grand Moff thinks that means I might have some connection to your force. Despite her situation, Shira felt a flicker of understanding. You want to know if you belong, she said softly. If there's something bigger than yourself that you could be part of. Anger flashed across Homelander's face. I don't need to belong to anything. I'm special, Shira finished for him. Above others, separate and superior. Yes, I saw that in you during our fight. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But I also saw the emptiness that comes with that belief. Homelander's eyes narrowed dangerously. You saw nothing. The Force allowed me to see you truly, Shira continued, knowing she was risking his wrath but sensing this was important. Not just your abilities or your anger, but the source of it. The child who was never allowed to be a child. The weapon shaped by those who cared only for your utility, never your humanity. Homelander moved with blinding speed, his hand closing around her throat once more. Stop talking, he hissed. Shira met his gaze without fear, even as his grip tightened. This is why the Kyber crystal responded to you, she managed to say. Not because you have the Force, but because you need what it represents. Connection, purpose beyond power. For a moment, she thought he would kill her. His eyes blazed with fury and something else, fear, perhaps, of the truth in her words. Then, abruptly, he released her and stepped back. The Grand Moff wants information, he said, his voice cold and controlled once more. I'm going to get it, but not through torture. That's amateur hour. He held up the Kyber crystal. This connects to the Force. You connect to the Force. There's a more direct way to get what I want. Before Shira could respond, Homelander pressed the crystal against her forehead. Pain exploded through her mind as the corrupted crystal interfaced with the neural disruptors, creating a feedback loop that tore through her mental shields. The Force surged and twisted, a tsunami of energy with Homelander at its center. Images flashed between them, memories, knowledge, experiences. Shira fought to control the flow, to protect the most vital information, but the assault was overwhelming. Homelander, untrained in the Force but immensely powerful in his own right, tore through her defenses with brute force rather than skill. When it ended, Shira collapsed against her restraints, blood trickling from her nose and ears. Homelander staggered back, his eyes wide as he processed the influx of information, not just the specific intelligence the Empire wanted, but a deeper understanding of the Force itself, of what it meant to be a Jedi, of the conflict that had shaped this galaxy for millennia. The light side and the dark, he murmured, almost to himself. Balance and chaos, selflessness and power. He looked at Shira with new comprehension. Your rebellion is based on hope, on a secret fleet gathering near Sullust, on the belief that tyranny contains the seeds of its own destruction. Shira closed her eyes in defeat. Key information had been compromised, locations, names, plans that had been in her mind despite her best efforts to compartmentalize. But that's not the most interesting thing I learned, Homelander continued. He held up the Kyber crystal, which now pulsed with renewed energy. The crack in its structure healed. The Force isn't just some mystical energy field. It's a kind of network, connecting everything. And these crystals are nodes in that network, amplifiers and conduits. He pocketed the crystal, his expression thoughtful. The Emperor, Darth Vader, their Sith. Dark side users who believe in power above all else. Not so different from me, really. A smile spread across his face. Except they need the Force to be what they are. I don't. I was born this way. Born, Shira echoed weakly. Or made, as they were made by their choices. Homelander ignored the distinction. I'll give Velen the information he wants. The rebel, bases, the Jedi hideouts. That buys me position and resources. He leaned closer to Shira. But what happens next won't be what he expects. This empire, with its Death Stars and Star Destroyers and black-masked enforcers, it's impressive, I'll grant you. But it's also fragile. And you think you can do better, Shira said, understanding dawning. I know I can. Homelander replied with absolute confidence. People don't need to be ruled by fear alone. They need someone to look up to, someone perfect, someone like me. The terrifying thing, Shira realized, was that he genuinely believed this. In his mind, his rule would be preferable to the Emperor's, not because it would be more just or free, but because it would come with the veneer of adoration, worship rather than mere obedience. The Force will oppose you, she warned, as it opposes all who seek dominance rather than balance. Homelander laughed. The Force is welcome to try. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, I'm not going to let them execute you. You're too valuable as a teacher. I will never teach you the ways of the Force, Shira said firmly. You already have, Homelander replied, tapping his temple. Everything you know is in here now. The rest is just practice. He reactivated the energy shield, sealing her in the cell once more. Rest up, Jedi. The galaxy is about to change, and you've got a front row seat. As he walked away, Shira closed her eyes and reached for the Force. The neural disruptors made the connection tenuous, like trying to grasp water, but it was still there, always there. And in that connection, she sensed something unexpected, a resonance between Homelander and the Kyber crystal. Yes, but also a fundamental disharmony. The crystal had bonded with him, but imperfectly. Like recognized, like power called to power, but there was a dissonance that couldn't be resolved. In that dissonance lay hope. Homelander might wield the crystal, might even channel aspects of the Force through it, but he would never truly be one with it. His nature, self-centered, dominating, hungry for adoration, stood in opposition to the Force's fundamental interconnectedness. He would discover this in time. The question was how much damage he would do before that revelation came. Grand Moff Valin received Homelander's report with carefully controlled satisfaction. The intelligence was significant: rebel fleet movements, supply routes, even the location of a hidden base where Jedi artifacts were supposedly being gathered. If accurate, this information could cripple rebellion operations across multiple sectors. Most impressive, Valin said, reviewing the data on his command console. The Jedi revealed this willingly? Let's say I can be very persuasive, Homelander replied, watching as Valin transferred the information to secure Imperial channels. What happens now? Now we verify and act, Valin said. If this intelligence proves accurate, it represents a significant victory for the Empire. He looked up at Homelander with renewed appraisal. And for you, the Emperor rewards those who deliver results. I want more than rewards, Homelander said bluntly. I want position, authority, public recognition. Valin nodded, having anticipated this demand. That can be arranged within certain parameters. The Empire has need of figureheads who can inspire loyalty among the citizens. He activated a holographic display showing Imperial propaganda materials, heroic images of stormtroopers, technological marvels like the Death Star, the Emperor's benevolent guidance represented in carefully crafted imagery. Our citizens require symbols of strength and protection, Valin continued. Lord Vader serves as the Empire's enforcement arm, feared and respected. But fear alone cannot sustain an empire. Admiration is also necessary. He manipulated the display to show concept imagery, Homelander rendered in Imperial aesthetics, a symbol of power and protection. This could be your role, the Empire's champion. Homelander studied the imagery, his expression revealing nothing of his true thoughts. It's a start, he said finally. When do we begin? Immediately, Valin replied, pleased by the apparent acquiescence. I've prepared an announcement of your appointment as Special Emissary of Imperial Security. Your first public appearance will be on Coruscant, where you will demonstrate your abilities before the Imperial Court. And the Jedi prisoner will be transferred to specialized facilities on Coruscant for further interrogation, Valin said smoothly. Her knowledge extends beyond mere rebel operations. Homelander nodded, seemingly satisfied. I want to be present for that interrogation. She and I have unfinished business. That can be arranged. Valin agreed, making a note in his datapad. Now, there are protocols to observe before your introduction to Imperial society. Proper conduct, expected, deference to the Emperor. I'm sure I'll manage, Homelander interrupted. Where I come from, I was quite the public figure. This is not your former world, Valin reminded him, a hint of steel entering his voice. The Emperor's displeasure is not something even someone of your abilities should risk. Homelander smiled, the expression never touching his eyes. Of course, I'm a team player. The lie was so transparent that Valin almost admired its audacity. This would require careful management indeed, but the potential rewards outweighed the risks, at least in the short term. Then we proceed as planned, Valin said, rising from his seat. My flagship will depart for Imperial Center immediately. Your debut awaits, Homelander. Try not to disappoint. As Valin departed to issue the necessary orders, Homelander remained in the command center, studying the holographic displays of Imperial might. Star destroyers, TIE fighters, the Death Star before its destruction impressive, technology by any standard. But technology could be destroyed, as the rebellion had demonstrated. What couldn't be destroyed was the narrative the story people told themselves about who protected them, who deserved their loyalty. Change the narrative, and even the mightiest empire would fall. Homelander touched the Kyber crystal in his pocket, feeling its resonance with the Force. Through it, he could sense echoes of the galaxy's collective consciousness, fear, hope, resignation, defiance, billions of minds crying out for someone to save them from the chaos. He would answer that cry, not as the Empire's champion, but as something far greater. It was only a matter of time. The hyperspace journey to Coruscant Imperial Center, as it was now officially known, took 3 days. During that time, Homelander familiarized himself with Imperial protocols and the structure of power within the New Order. He studied histories of the Clone Wars, the fall of the Jedi, the rise of the Empire. He absorbed information about Sith and Jedi, their philosophies and abilities. Most importantly, he learned about Emperor Palpatine and his apprentice, Darth Vader. The picture that emerged confirmed what he had already suspected. The Empire was built on fear and maintained through strict hierarchy. At its apex stood Palpatine, not merely a political leader but a Sith Lord of tremendous power. Beneath him, Vader served as enforcer and apprentice, himself a Force wielder of legendary abilities. The Imperial military, vast though it was, existed primarily to implement their will across the galaxy. It was a structure that worked, after a fashion, but it was also rigid and ultimately brittle. Fear inspired obedience but not loyalty. When a sufficient alternative presented itself, those who feared would turn against their oppressors. It had already begun with the rebellion. Homelander saw opportunity in this weakness. The Empire had the infrastructure, the fleets, the troops, the resources. What it lacked was a figurehead that citizens could genuinely admire rather than merely fear. Palpatine ruled from the shadows, his appearance withered and grotesque by all accounts. Vader was a nightmare figure in black armor and a respirator mask. Neither offered the common people anything to aspire to or adore. But Homelander, handsome, powerful, charismatic when he chose to be, could fill that void. He could be the face of a new order, one that commanded not just obedience but worship. And worship, as he knew from experience, was a far more reliable tool of control than mere fear. The Kyber crystal enhanced these ambitions. Through it, he had gained not just knowledge, but a tenuous connection to the Force itself. Not as a Jedi or Sith might connect through training and innate sensitivity, but as a parasite might attach to a host, drawing power without understanding its nature. The crystal acted as an interface between his inherent abilities and the mystical energy field that permeated this galaxy. Each day, he practiced. Small things at first, sensing emotions from nearby crew members, influencing their thoughts in subtle ways. The crystal grew warmer with use, its glow intensifying as it channeled power both to and from him. It was an imperfect connection, unstable and potentially dangerous. But then, Danger had never troubled Homelander before. On the final day of the journey, he visited Shira Kal in the detention block. The Jedi looked weaker, the neural disruptors taking their toll on both body and spirit. Still, there was defiance in her eyes when he entered her cell. "Imperial Center awaits us," Homelander said conversationally, dismissing the guards. "I thought you might appreciate an update on our destination." "The heart of corruption," Shira replied, her voice hoarse but steady. "I've been there before, when it was still called Coruscant, when the Jedi Temple still stood." "Yes, I've read about that," Homelander said. "Impressive architecture. The Emperor converted it to his personal palace, I understand. A nice bit of symbolism, conquering your enemies and literally standing on their ruins." "Symbols can be powerful," Shira acknowledged, "but they can also be turned against their creators." Homelander smiled, recognizing the implicit warning. "You're talking about the rebellion, I assume. Their adoption of the Jedi emblem, their appropriation of Republic imagery." He shook his head. "Amateur efforts. Effective propaganda requires more than borrowed symbols. It requires a face, a figure that embodies the message." "Like you," Shira said, understanding. "The Empire's new symbol." "For now," Homelander agreed. "But symbols can evolve, grow beyond their original purpose." He withdrew the Kyber crystal, which pulsed with stronger light than before. "I've been practicing. This crystal has opened up interesting possibilities." Shira's expression grew troubled. "The crystal is corrupted by your use. It responds to you, but at a cost to its nature." "Everything has a cost," Homelander replied with a shrug. "Power most of all. The question is whether the price is worth paying." He pocketed the crystal again. "I think it is. What do you want from me?" Shira asked directly. "You've taken the information the Empire wanted. You've violated my mind and stolen knowledge of the Force. Why continue this pretense of conversation?" Homelander considered the question seriously. "Perspective, I suppose. You Jedi spent thousands of years studying the Force, building philosophies around it, creating rules and codes. All that accumulated wisdom might be useful as I forge my own path. The wisdom of the Jedi lies in understanding that the Force is not a tool for personal power," Shira said. "It's a responsibility, a trust. The dark side offers quick power, but at the cost of everything that makes that power worth having." "Spoken like a true believer," Homelander said with a trace of mockery. "But you're forgetting something important. I already had power before I came here, before I touched your precious Force." His eyes glowed briefly. "What the crystal gives me isn't power itself, but reach, connection to something larger." Shira studied him, seeing past the confidence to the uncertainty beneath. "That's what you've always wanted, isn't it? Not just to be feared or obeyed, but to belong to something greater than yourself." Her voice softened with genuine compassion. "The tragedy is that you could have that connection. The Force flows through all living things, even you, but not through domination or control." "Save the recruitment speech," Homelander said, his tone hardening. "I didn't come here for spiritual guidance. I came to tell you what happens next." He moved closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The Empire thinks they're using me. The Grand Moff, the Emperor, they see a weapon to be pointed at their enemies. What they don't understand is that I've never been anyone's weapon but my own." "And what does your weapon intend?" Shira asked quietly. Homelander smiled, cold and calculating. "To remake this galaxy in my image. To give the people what they truly want, not freedom, which terrifies them, not oppression, which embitters them, but perfect protection. A god to worship who actually answers their prayers." "You're not a god," Shira said. "No matter how powerful you become." "Close enough for government work," Homelander replied with a smirk. "The point is, change is coming. The Empire, the Rebellion, the remnants of the Jedi and Sith, all the old divisions will be swept away. There will only be those who stand with me and those who stand against me." "And which do you think I am?" Shira asked. Homelander studied her for a long moment. "Neither, yet. You're observer, a witness. When the time comes, you'll choose or have the choice made for you." He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "One last thing. Your rebellion. When we reach Imperial Center, the fleets will launch based on the intelligence I provided, but the coordinates have been subtly altered just enough to send them to empty space rather than actual rebel locations." Shira couldn't hide her surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Because your rebellion is useful to me, for now," Homelander said simply. "The Empire needs to be destabilized before it can be remade. Chaos before order. You should understand that concept from your Jedi philosophy." With that cryptic statement, he was gone, leaving Shira to contemplate the implications of his words. The Jedi Knight closed her eyes, reaching for the Force despite the neural disruptors. The connection was weak, but present, like a whisper heard from another room. Through it, she sensed the approaching storm, not just the physical arrival at Coruscant, but the clash of wills and powers that would follow. Homelander was more dangerous than the Empire realized. Not because of his physical abilities, formidable though they were, but because of his ambition and his fundamental misunderstanding of power's purpose. He sought to replace one tyranny with another, believing his version superior simply because it would wear a more appealing face. And yet, within this danger lay possibility. The Empire and Homelander were now on a collision course, though neither fully recognized it yet. When they clashed, opportunity would arise for the rebellion, for the remaining Jedi, for all who sought a galaxy ruled by justice rather than force. Shira settled into a meditative posture despite her restraints. Patience had always been the Jedi way. The time to act would come. Until then, she would watch and wait and prepare. Imperial Center gleamed like a mechanical jewel against the blackness of space. The entire planet was a city, layer built upon layer over millennia of civilization. At its heart rose the Imperial Palace, once the Jedi Temple, now the seat of Palpatine's power. Surrounding it, government districts, luxury apartments for the elite, military installations, and industrial zones formed concentric rings of decreasing privilege. The deeper one went, the darker and more desperate life became, until the lowest levels where sunlight never penetrated and forgotten beings eked out meager existences in perpetual gloom. The Star Destroyer Inevitable descended through the atmosphere with the ponderous grace of a predator, its massive hull casting shadows over the upper-level districts. Below, citizens paused to look upward, some with pride in Imperial might, others with resignation or fear. A Star Destroyer's arrival often heralded increased security measures, which inevitably meant more oppression for those already struggling. On the bridge, Grand Moff Valen observed the approach with satisfaction. His return to Imperial Center with a captured Jedi and a powerful new asset would elevate his standing considerably. Homelander stood beside him, resplendent in a modified Imperial uniform that accommodated his original design while integrating Imperial insignia. The effect was deliberate, familiar enough to convey authority within the system, distinct enough to mark him as special. "Impressive," Homelander commented, gazing down at the endless cityscape, "though not as clean as I expected for the capital of a galactic empire." "Imperial Center is ancient," Valen explained, "built and rebuilt countless times. The upper levels are maintained to exacting standards, but resources are allocated according to priority. The lower levels are less essential. Out of sight, out of mind," Homelander translated. "Practical, if not particularly inspiring. The Empire concerns itself with order, not inspiration," Valen replied. "Though your presence may help change that perception." Homelander smiled at the irony the Grand Moff couldn't possibly comprehend. "I look forward to it." The ship docked at a high-security military platform adjacent to the Imperial Palace. A full honor guard awaited their arrival, rows of stormtroopers in gleaming white armor, Imperial officers in pressed uniforms, even a contingent of the crimson-robed Imperial Royal Guard, the Emperor's personal protectors. An audience had been arranged at the palace within the hour. The Emperor does not tolerate tardiness, Valin cautioned as they prepared to disembark. Nor does he appreciate excessive displays of individual power in his presence. Your demonstration will come later, in a controlled setting before the Imperial Court. I understand protocol, Homelander assured him, adjusting his cape to maximum effect. I'll be on my best behavior. As they descended the ramp, flanked by stormtroopers escorting the restrained Jedi prisoner, a palpable tension filled the air. The Imperial officers studied Homelander with barely concealed curiosity and suspicion. Word of his abilities had preceded him, generating both interest and concern among the Imperial elite. A new, power player had entered the game, one whose capabilities and loyalties remained uncertain. A sleek official shuttle transported them from the landing platform to the Imperial Palace. As they approached the massive structure, Homelander studied it with keen interest. The architecture retained elements of the original Jedi Temple, though corrupted and reshaped to serve Imperial aesthetics, sharp angles replacing gentle curves, red banners bearing the Imperial crest hanging where symbols of the Jedi Order had once been displayed. It was conquest made manifest in stone and durasteel. Inside, the palace corridors stretched vast and imposing, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant before the Emperor's might. Their footsteps echoed on polished floors as royal guards escorted them deeper into the complex, toward the throne room where Palpatine awaited. "Remember," Valin murmured, "speak only when addressed directly. Kneel until given permission to rise. Do not make direct eye contact, unless invited to do so." Homelander nodded, though internally he chafed at the subservience expected of him. In his world, he had bowed to no one. Here, he would play the role required for now. The throne room doors towered before them, black and imposing. They swung open silently to reveal a cavernous chamber, dimly lit and dominated by a raised dais at the far end. Upon it sat a throne, and upon the throne a figure in dark robes, his face shadowed by a hood. Emperor Palpatine, once Chancellor of the Republic, now absolute ruler of the galaxy. Even from a distance, power radiated from him, not the obvious physical power that Homelander embodied, but something more insidious. The dark side of the Force clung to him like a miasma, almost visible to those sensitive to its currents. Standing at the foot of the dais was a taller figure clad entirely in black armor, a cape flowing from broad shoulders, a mask concealing whatever face might lie beneath. The rhythmic sound of mechanical breathing filled the otherwise silent chamber. Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith, and the Emperor's enforcer. His presence was a palpable weight, pressing against the minds of those who entered his vicinity. Through the Kyber crystal, Homelander could sense the Force swirling around Vader, a storm of pain, rage, and tightly controlled power. As they approached the throne, Valin dropped to one knee, bowing his head in practiced deference. After the slightest hesitation, Homelander followed suit, though he kept his head raised enough to observe the two Sith Lords. Behind them, the stormtroopers forced Shira to her knees, the Jedi grimacing as neural disruptors continued to suppress her connection to the Force. "Rise, Grand Moff Valin," the Emperor said, his voice a dry rasp that nonetheless carried authority. "Your expedition has yielded interesting results." Valin stood, maintaining a respectful posture. "Thank you, Your Highness. As requested, I present the Jedi. Knight Shira Kal, captured at our facility on Botajeff. Her interrogation has already provided valuable intelligence regarding rebel operations." "Yes," the Emperor said, leaning forward slightly. "So your reports indicated. Most efficient." His gaze shifted to Homelander, eyes gleaming yellow beneath his hood. "And this is the anomaly you encountered at Kuat." "Homelander, Your Highness," Valin confirmed. "As my reports detailed, he possesses extraordinary abilities that may prove invaluable to the Empire's security operations." The Emperor studied Homelander with unsettling intensity. "Rise," he commanded. "Let us look upon this new ally." Homelander stood, meeting the Emperor's gaze directly despite Valin's earlier warning. Through the crystal in his pocket, he could feel the dark side energy emanating from Palpatine, ancient, corrupt, immensely powerful. It was like standing near a black hole, feeling the pull of its gravity well. "You are not of this galaxy," the Emperor observed. "The Force moves strangely around you, neither Jedi nor Sith, yet powerful in ways unfamiliar to us." "I come from a different reality," Homelander confirmed. "One where power manifests differently than your Force. But the principles remain the same. Strength prevails, weakness perishes." The Emperor smiled, a thin expression devoid of warmth. "Indeed. Grand Moff Valin suggests you might serve the Empire as a symbol as well as a weapon, a figure to inspire loyalty among our citizens while striking fear into our enemies." "I've had considerable experience in both roles," Homelander replied. "So I understand." The Emperor gestured to Vader, who had remained motionless throughout the exchange. "Lord Vader serves as the Empire's sword, swift, merciless, feared throughout the galaxy. Yet fear alone cannot sustain an empire of our scope. Admiration has its uses." Vader's mechanical breathing filled the pause that followed. "The abilities this outsider claims are significant," the Dark Lord said, his deep voice resonating through vocoder, "yet untested against true power." The challenge was unmistakable. Homelander felt a surge of irritation, tempered by caution. According to all he had learned, Vader was a formidable opponent, a Force user of tremendous ability, experienced in combat against both conventional and Force-wielding enemies. Still, nothing in this galaxy had proven capable of harming Homelander physically. The true question was how his abilities would fare against the mystical powers of the Sith. "A demonstration seems appropriate," the Emperor declared, clearly sensing the tension between the two. "Not here, of course. The Imperial arena has been prepared for this purpose. The court will observe, as will I." He gestured to Shira. "The Jedi prisoner will be held in the Palace Detention Center for specialized interrogation. Her knowledge of the Force may provide context for our new allies' capabilities." "As you wish, Your Highness," Valin acknowledged with a bow. The Emperor's gaze returned to Homelander. "You have traveled far, stranger, to a galaxy unfamiliar to you. Yet you seem remarkably adaptable to your circumstances." "Adaptation is survival," Homelander replied smoothly, "and I'm very good at surviving." "Indeed." The Emperor leaned back in his throne. "We shall see just how good when you face Lord Vader in the arena tomorrow. Until then, you will be provided appropriate accommodations and a full briefing on Imperial Court protocol." His tone made it clear that the audience was concluded. As they withdrew from the throne room, Homelander could feel Vader's gaze following him, assessing, calculating. The confrontation had been inevitable from the moment of his arrival in this galaxy. Two apex predators could not occupy the same territory without establishing dominance. Tomorrow would determine whether he would serve this empire or begin the process of reshaping it to his own design. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same again. Outside the throne room, Valin turned to Homelander with barely contained anger. "You were instructed not to meet the Emperor's gaze directly," he hissed. "Such presumption could have resulted in immediate punishment." "Yet it didn't," Homelander observed casually. "Perhaps because the Emperor recognized something in me worthy of respect rather than blind obedience." Valin's expression tightened further. "Do not mistake calculated tolerance for approval. The Emperor tests all who enter his service. Tomorrow's demonstration is not merely exhibition, it is trial by combat." "Against Vader," Homelander said, glancing back toward the throne room doors. "Is he really as powerful as the stories suggest?" "Lord Vader has exterminated entire enclaves of Jedi single-handedly," Valin replied. "His command of the Force is second only to the Emperor himself. Do not underestimate him because of the mechanical suit it contains him. It does not limit him." Homelander smiled. "I look forward to the challenge." As they walked through the palace corridors, Shira was separated from them, led away by royal guards toward the detention levels. Before she was taken, her eyes met Homelander's briefly, not with hatred or fear, but with something more complex. Understanding, perhaps, or pity. He brushed the thought aside. The Jedi's perspective was irrelevant now. Tomorrow's confrontation with Vader would determine his path forward. Victory would establish his position within the Empire's power structure. Defeat was inconceivable. The Kyber crystal pulsed warmly in his pocket, resonating with the force energies that permeated the ancient structure. Through it, Homelander sensed currents of power flowing throughout the palace, dark and potent, centered on the Emperor himself, but with curious eddies and contradictions. This place had been a Jedi stronghold for thousands of years before Palpatine claimed it. Echoes of that legacy remained, buried but not erased. Those echoes whispered of balance, of connection, of power rooted in something beyond mere domination. Homelander ignored them. Such philosophies were for the weak, for those who lacked the strength to impose their will directly. He had never needed justification for his power beyond the simple fact of possessing it. Tomorrow, he would demonstrate that power before the Empire's elite, and begin the next phase of his ascension. The Imperial Arena stood within the palace complex, a circular coliseum designed for military demonstrations, training exercises, and, occasionally, executions disguised as combat trials. Today, it was filled to capacity with the Empire's elite military officers, government officials, wealthy industrialists, and various sycophants who had secured invitations through influence or bribery. In a private viewing box elevated above the general seating, Emperor Palpatine observed the proceedings, flanked by royal guards and attended by his closest advisors. His presence lent the event unprecedented significance. Rarely did the Emperor personally attend such demonstrations. Below, the arena floor had been cleared of obstacles, creating an open space approximately 50 meters in diameter. The ground was packed dirt rather than metal or stone, a deliberate choice that spoke to the nature of the expected confrontation. This would not be a sterile technology demonstration, but something more primal. Homelander entered from one side of the arena, still wearing his modified Imperial uniform with the cape flowing dramatically behind him. He had refused the armor offered to him, seeing it as unnecessary and detrimental to his image. Power should appear effortless, untouchable. Armor suggested vulnerability. From the opposite entrance came Darth Vader, his black form stark against the lighter surroundings. He carried his lightsaber, but had not yet ignited it. His measured stride and the rhythmic sound of his breathing projected absolute confidence. The crowd fell silent as the two figures approached the center of the arena. Through the Kyber crystal, now worn on a chain around his neck, Homelander could sense the force gathering around Vader, a maelstrom of dark energy, controlled but immense. This was power different from his own, rooted in mysticism rather than biology, yet undeniably real. Grand Moff Valen's voice rang out from the announcer's position. By command of His Imperial Majesty, a demonstration of combat capabilities will now commence. Lord Vader will assess the potential of our new ally through direct engagement. The demonstration will conclude at Lord Vader's discretion or by Imperial command. The implications were clear. This was no friendly sparring match, but a genuine test with potentially lethal consequences. Homelander smiled. He had expected nothing less. "I've been looking forward to this," he said, as Vader stopped several meters away. "Your reputation precedes you, Lord Vader." The Sith Lord regarded him silently for a moment, the mask revealing nothing of the man beneath. "Reputation is meaningless," he finally replied. "Only power matters, and yours remains unproven." "Then let's remedy that," Homelander suggested, rising several meters into the air. A murmur ran through the crowd at this casual display of flight without visible technology. Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming to life. "Your abilities are impressive," he acknowledged, "but the Force is stronger than any physical power." To demonstrate, he extended his free hand. Homelander felt an invisible pressure against his chest, attempting to pull him downward. The Force grip was tremendous, far stronger than anything Shearer had managed during their confrontation. For a moment, he descended slightly before counteracting the pull with his own flight capability. "Not bad," Homelander conceded. But let me show you something from my world. His eyes glowed crimson as heat vision lanced out, twin beams of intense energy targeting Vader directly. The Sith Lord raised his lightsaber, catching the beams on the blade. The energy dispersed in a shower of sparks, deflected rather than absorbed. Vader had recognized the nature of the attack instantly and responded with appropriate countermeasures. Impressive reflexes and tactical assessment. This would not be as simple as overwhelming a physically inferior opponent. Homelander descended rapidly, closing the distance between them with supernatural speed. His fist struck out, aiming for Vader's chest plate, but the Sith Lord had already sensed the attack through the Force. He sidestepped with surprising agility for his size, simultaneously slashing with his lightsaber. The blade connected with Homelander's arm and failed to cut through. Sparks erupted at the point of contact as invulnerable flesh met energy blade. Both combatants paused momentarily, reassessing. "Interesting," Vader said, his mechanical voice betraying no emotion. "Your physical form resists lightsaber energy." "I told you," Homelander replied with a smirk. "I'm not from around here." The crowd watched in stunned silence. A lightsaber was supposed to cut through anything save another energy blade or certain rare materials. That this newcomer's bare skin had stopped it challenged fundamental assumptions about power in their galaxy. Vader did not waste time on further analysis. He attacked with renewed purpose, lightsaber moving in complex patterns designed to test Homelander's defenses from multiple angles. Each strike connected but failed to penetrate. Simultaneously, Vader employed the Force to hurl objects from around the arena, equipment, debris, even sections of the wall at his opponent. Homelander destroyed most projectiles with heat vision and dodged others, his movements blindingly fast. He counterattacked with physical blows that would have shattered normal armor, but Vader's suit was reinforced with materials and force, techniques that absorbed some of the impact. Still, each successful hit drove the Sith Lord back, the ground trembling beneath his boots. "You're holding back," Homelander observed during a momentary lull. "Afraid of damaging your Emperor's new toy?" "The Emperor has many toys," Vader replied coldly. "Most break eventually." The Sith Lord raised both hands, abandoning his lightsaber to a Force-assisted hover beside him. The air itself seemed to distort as he gathered the dark side around him in unprecedented concentration. Objects throughout the arena began to vibrate, then crack, then implode as space itself compressed under Vader's command. This was power beyond mere telekinesis, a fundamental manipulation of physical forces that even Homelander could not ignore. The pressure increased exponentially, focusing directly on him. Blood vessels burst in his eyes, healed, burst again. Internal organs compressed painfully. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he felt genuine, physical distress. The kyber crystal at his throat flared in response, its energy interacting with the Force powers being directed against him. Through it, Homelander felt something he had never experienced before, a connection to the energy Vader was wielding, not merely as its target, but as a potential conduit. Acting on instinct rather than understanding, Homelander seized that connection. The crystal blazed with crimson light as he redirected the Force energy rather than simply resisting it. The pressure dissipated, then reversed, flowing back toward Vader in a shockwave of combined powers. Homelander's inherent abilities amplified and transformed by the Force itself. Vader staggered, his concentration disrupted by the unexpected counterattack. The lightsaber fell from its hover position, automatically deactivating as it hit the ground. For a crucial moment, the Sith Lord was off balance, his defenses compromised. Homelander capitalized instantly. He crossed the distance, between them in a blur, delivering a punch precisely calibrated to disable rather than kill. The blow struck Vader's chest plate directly over the control panel that regulated his life support systems. Components cracked, alarms blared within Vader's suit. His breathing pattern faltered, the rhythmic sound becoming erratic. He dropped to one knee, one hand stretched toward his fallen lightsaber, the other braced against the ground. The crowd gasped collectively. Never had they witnessed Lord Vader brought low in combat. It was unprecedented, almost unthinkable. Homelander stood over the kneeling Sith Lord, triumph evident in his posture. "I believe that concludes our demonstration," he announced, voice carrying to all corners of the arena. Through the Force, through the damaged but functioning systems of his suit, Vader assessed his opponent with new understanding. This was not merely physical power, extraordinary though that was. The outsider had somehow channeled the Force itself. Despite having no training or innate sensitivity, the Kyber crystal served as a conduit, allowing him to access and manipulate energies that should have been beyond his reach. The implications were disturbing. If this ability could be refined, controlled. From the Imperial box came a sound few ever heard: Emperor Palpatine's laughter. It cut through the stunned silence of the arena, carrying notes of genuine amusement and calculated approval. "Most impressive," the Emperor called out, his voice amplified to reach all present. "Lord Vader's assessment is complete. The demonstration has exceeded expectations." Imperial guards rushed forward, not to arrest Homelander but to assist Vader, who waved them away with Imperial disdain. Despite his damaged systems, he rose to his feet through sheer will and the power of the dark side. He summoned his lightsaber to his hand, but did not reignite it. "The outsider has potential," Vader acknowledged, his vocoder rendering the words in the same tone as always, giving no indication of the pain or humiliation he might feel. With proper guidance, he may serve the Empire well. The emphasis on guidance was subtle but unmistakable. Vader was already positioning himself to control this new asset, to bring Homelander under his influence rather than treating him as a rival. Homelander understood the maneuver perfectly. It was politics. Power plays the same games he had navigated in his own world, merely with different titles and technologies. "I look forward to learning from the Empire's finest," he replied with calculated humility. The crowd erupted in applause, relief mixing with excitement. They had witnessed history, a new power entering the Imperial hierarchy, one that had stood against Darth Vader himself and emerged victorious. Already, calculations were being made, allegiances reconsidered, opportunities identified. The Imperial court was nothing if not adaptable to shifts in power, as attendants led Vader from the arena for repairs. Homelander turned toward the Imperial box and bowed deeply to the Emperor. The gesture was perfectly calibrated, respectful, without being servile, acknowledging authority while projecting confidence. Palpatine nodded in acknowledgement, his expression unreadable beneath his hood. He had observed more than a mere combat demonstration today. He had witnessed the emergence of a new factor in his carefully maintained power structure, a wild card that could either strengthen the Empire tremendously or threaten its very foundations. Such possibilities were always worth exploring, at least until their full implications became clear. Then decisions could be made about preservation or elimination. For now, the Emperor would watch, and wait, and plan as he had always done. In the aftermath of the arena demonstration, Imperial Center buzzed with rumors and speculation. Homelander's victory over Darth Vader, however qualified it might have been, represented a seismic shift in the power dynamics of the Empire. Official Imperial news channels broadcast carefully edited footage of the event, presenting it as a friendly exhibition rather than the genuine contest it had been. The narrative emphasized collaboration rather than competition, a new powerful ally joining the Empire's existing strength. Privately, however, the Imperial elite understood the truth. Someone had emerged who could potentially challenge Vader's position as the Emperor's enforcer. Whether this represented opportunity or threat depended entirely on one's existing relationship with the Sith Lord. For Homelander, the victory brought immediate elevation. Grand Moff Valin, sensing which way the wind was blowing, arranged a public ceremony in which Homelander was officially named Imperial Protector, a newly created position with authority that strategically overlapped several existing power centers without directly challenging any of. He was given quarters in the Imperial Palace itself, resources appropriate to his station, and a personal staff drawn from the most capable administrators in the imperial bureaucracy. Most importantly, he was granted regular access to the Emperor for consultation on security matters. Such direct access was a privilege few enjoyed, and its bestowal signaled Palpatine's personal interest in his new asset. The Kyber crystal that had proven so crucial in the arena now hung openly around Homelander's neck, incorporated into his modified uniform as an official symbol of his position. Imperial propagandists were already developing narratives around it, ancient power harnessed by the Empire's newest champion, mystical energy channeled through superior technology and biological capability. The truth was far more complex, but truth had never been the Empire's primary concern. 3 days after the arena demonstration, Homelander was summoned to the Emperor's private meditation chamber deep within the palace. Unlike the Grand Throne Room, used for official audiences, this was a smaller space designed for conversation rather than intimidation. The lighting was dim, the decor minimal. The Emperor himself sat in a simple chair rather than upon a throne, his hood pulled back to reveal his withered features. "You have made quite an impression, Homelander," Palpatine observed as his visitor entered and bowed. "The court speaks of little else." "I aim to serve effectively, Your Highness," Homelander replied, taking the seat indicated across from the Emperor. "The demonstration provided an excellent opportunity to display what I can offer the Empire." "Indeed." Palpatine studied him with unsettling intensity. "Lord Vader's assessment was most informative. He believes your connection to the Force, while unorthodox, has significant potential." Homelander touched the crystal at his throat. "The connection seems to flow through this. I don't pretend to understand it fully, but I can feel its power." "Kyber crystals have been studied for millennia," Palpatine said. "They resonate with the Force in ways that even the Jedi never fully comprehended. That one has chosen to bond with you despite your lack of traditional Force sensitivity is unprecedented." "I've always been unique," Homelander said with a hint of pride. "Yes." The Emperor leaned forward slightly. "Tell me of your world, Homelander. Not the superficial details you provided Grand Moff Valen, but the truth of your position there. You were more than merely powerful, were you not? You held status, influence. There was no point in deception." The Emperor likely had ways to verify whatever he said, especially regarding emotional truths. "I was worshipped," Homelander admitted. "A symbol of protection and power that ordinary people looked up to. The face of security in an uncertain world." "Ah," Palpatine nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "As I suspected, you understand the value of symbolism in governance. The need for figures who embody the promises a regime makes to its citizens. Protection in exchange for loyalty," Homelander agreed. "Fear has its uses, but admiration is more reliable." "Precisely." The Emperor rose, moving to a viewport that overlooked the endless cityscape of Imperial Center. "The Empire has relied heavily on fear since its inception. It was necessary during the transition from Republic to Empire, when resistance was widespread and vocal. But fear alone cannot sustain governance indefinitely. It must be balanced with other motivations." Homelander joined him at the viewport. "Your citizens need something to believe in, not just something to fear." "Yes." Palpatine turned to face him directly. "Lord Vader serves admirably as the embodiment of imperial justice, swift, merciless, inescapable. But his appearance, his methods, inspire terror rather than admiration. There is a void in our symbolic structure that you might fill quite effectively." "The hero to his villain," Homelander suggested. A crude characterization, but essentially correct. The Emperor returned to his seat. "I propose a series of public appearances throughout key Imperial worlds. Demonstrations of your abilities in controlled settings. Interventions in situations that highlight Imperial benevolence. A carefully constructed narrative presenting you as the Empire's protector rather than merely its enforcer." Homelander considered this, recognizing the opportunity it presented. Public adoration was what he craved most, what had always driven him. Here it was being offered on a galactic scale, with the full propaganda machinery of the Empire behind it. "I accept, Your Highness," he said with a bow. "It would be my honor to serve as the Empire's symbol." "Excellent," Palpatine smiled thinly. "There is, however, one matter to address before we proceed. The Jedi prisoner." Homelander's expression remained neutral. "What about her?" "She has proven resistant to standard interrogation techniques," the Emperor said. "Even our most skilled questioners have extracted little beyond what she revealed to you initially. Yet her knowledge of remaining Jedi enclaves could be invaluable." "You want me to interrogate her again?" Homelander surmised. "Your methods previously yielded results," Palpatine confirmed. "And there appears to be a connection between you that might be exploited. The Kyber crystal provides a bridge between your abilities and the force she wields." Homelander nodded slowly. "I'll speak with her." "Good." The Emperor rose, signaling the end of the audience. "Report to me directly with whatever you learn. Lord Vader need not be involved at this stage." The implication was clear. This was an opportunity to establish a direct line to the Emperor, bypassing Vader's traditional role as intermediary. Another step in Homelander's integration into the Imperial power structure. As he departed the meditation chamber, Homelander felt the weight of the Kyber crystal against his chest. Through it, he sensed currents in the Force flowing throughout the palace, dark and potent around the Emperor, but with curious eddies and contradictions elsewhere, including, he now realized, from the detention levels below where Shira Kal was held. The Jedi's presence registered as a point of light amid the prevailing darkness, diminished by the neural disruptors, but not extinguished. She represented a different approach to power, one based on balance and connection rather than dominance. Philosophically opposed to everything Homelander believed about the natural order. Yet there was something in her perspective that nagged at him like a splinter beneath the skin of his certainty. Something that resonated with the Kyber crystal in ways he didn't fully understand. He would extract whatever information the Emperor required, but perhaps there was more to learn from Shira Kal than merely the locations of hidden Jedi. The Imperial Palace Detention Center represented the pinnacle of confinement technology. Unlike the crude cells of ordinary Imperial prisons, these chambers were designed specifically for high-value political prisoners, Force users, and others requiring specialized containment. Each cell was isolated from the others, monitored constantly, and equipped with customized restraint systems based on the prisoner's abilities. Shira Kal's cell contained not only standard neural disruptors, but also a force-dampening field generator technology rumored to have been developed from ancient Sith artifacts. The combined effect reduced her connection to the Force to the barest minimum required for survival. Even breathing was difficult, each intake of air a conscious effort rather than an automatic function. Despite these hardships, Shira maintained her center. Jedi training had prepared her for such situations, teaching techniques to endure when the Force seemed absent. She focused on the smallest sensations, the texture of the cell floor beneath her, the subtle variations in the recycled air, the distant vibrations of the massive city planet. Through these minimal connections, she kept her awareness of the living Force intact, if severely limited. When the cell door opened to admit Homelander, she was sitting in a meditation posture despite her restraints. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on her visitor with calm assessment. "Imperial Protector," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "Congratulations on your new title." Homelander dismissed the guards with a gesture. When they had gone, he deactivated the surveillance systems using the override codes he had been provided. This conversation would remain between them. "You've been refusing to cooperate," he observed, studying her with clinical interest. The neural disruptors had taken their toll. Her skin was pale, her frame thinner than before. Yet there remained a core of strength in her posture, a determination that physical deterioration couldn't touch. "I've told your interrogators everything I'm willing to share," Shira replied, "which is nothing they don't already know." "The Emperor is displeased," Homelander said, circling her slowly. He believes you possess information about remaining Jedi enclaves that could be valuable to Imperial security. If such enclaves existed, do you really think I would reveal them? Shira asked. Even to save myself? No, Homelander admitted. That's why conventional interrogation has failed. Your type puts principle above survival. He knelt to bring himself to her eye level. But our previous encounter demonstrated another approach. The Kyber crystal creates a connection between us, a bridge that bypasses your conscious resistance. The crystal at his throat pulsed with crimson light, responding to its proximity to a trained Force user despite the dampening field. Shira's gaze fixed on it, recognition and concern evident in her expression. You've corrupted it further, she observed, bent it to your will, rather than attuning yourself to its nature. I prefer to think of it as an upgrade, Homelander replied. It serves my purposes more effectively this way. At the cost of its true potential, Shira said. Kyber crystals are semi-sentient, aligned with the Force itself. By dominating rather than harmonizing, you limit what it can offer you. Homelander's expression hardened slightly. I didn't come here for a philosophy lesson. Yet you disabled the surveillance, Shira noted, which suggests you want something beyond what the Emperor sent you to obtain. Perceptive, despite her weakened state. Homelander acknowledged this with a slight nod. I'm curious about certain aspects of the Force. The crystal connects me to it, but in ways I don't fully understand. You might provide context that Imperial records lack. Why would I help you become more powerful? Shira asked. You've allied yourself with the Empire, with everything the Jedi stood against. Have I? Homelander countered. I've accepted a position that serves my interests. That's not the same as allegiance. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. The Emperor believes he's using me. So does Vader. They see a weapon to be pointed at their enemies. What they don't understand is that I've never been anyone's weapon but my own. Shira studied him for a long moment. You plan to betray them, she said finally. It wasn't a question. Betray implies loyalty, Homelander corrected. I have none to them. I have objectives, and they're currently helping me achieve them. When that changes, our arrangement will end. And what are these objectives? Shira asked. Beyond power for its own sake. Homelander stood, pacing the small cell as he considered how much to reveal. In my world, I was worshipped, he said finally. Not just obeyed or feared, but genuinely adored. People looked up to me, believed in me. I was their protector, their savior, their god in all but name. And you want that again, Shira surmised. But on a galactic scale. Is that so terrible? Homelander asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. The Empire rules through fear and oppression. The rebellion offers chaos and uncertainty. I could provide something better: protection with a face, security with a smile, someone to believe in rather than merely obey. A benevolent dictator is still a dictator, Shira replied, and benevolence rarely survives absolute power. Homelander smiled coldly. I never claimed to be benevolent, only preferable to the alternatives. Shira shifted position, wincing as the movement aggravated injuries from previous interrogations. Why tell me this? You must know I won't support replacing one tyrant with another. Because you understand the Force in ways the Sith don't, Homelander said directly. Their perspective is limited by their obsession with the dark side. I need a more complete picture if I'm to fully utilize what this crystal offers. Shira closed her eyes briefly, reaching for the Force despite the dampening field. Through their proximity and the Kyber crystal's resonance, she sensed the truth beneath Homelander's words, the genuine curiosity, the hunger for understanding mixed with his overwhelming ambition. The Force isn't a tool to be utilized, she said finally. That's the fundamental misunderstanding both you and the Sith share. It's a living energy field, a balance between all things. Those who try to dominate it invariably destroy themselves. Yet both Jedi and Sith channel it for their own purposes, Homelander pointed out. Your lightsabers, your mental tricks, Your physical enhancements, all tools by another name. There's a difference between channeling and dominating, Shira insisted. Between serving and exploiting, the Jedi seek harmony with the Force, allowing it to flow through them while respecting its nature. The Sith bend it to their will, forcing it to serve their desires regardless of the damage caused. Homelander fingered the crystal thoughtfully. And which approach yields greater power? The dark side is quicker, easier, more seductive, Shira acknowledged, but ultimately self-defeating. It corrupts everything it touches, including its wielder. Look at the Emperor physically twisted by the dark energies he commands. Look at Vader, more machine than man, bound to a suit that keeps him alive after his fall to the dark side. Correlation doesn't prove causation, Homelander argued. Their conditions might result from specific events rather than their Force philosophy. The outer reflects the inner, Shira said simply. The Force makes manifest what exists in the spirit. The dark side promises power without limit, but delivers power with terrible cost. Homelander considered this, his expression thoughtful. The crystal at his throat pulsed with energy, responding to the discussion of its nature. And the light side? What does it offer? Balance, harmony, connection to all living things, power that sustains rather than consumes. Shira leaned forward, despite her restraints, intensity in her gaze. You've experienced glimpses of this already, haven't you? Through the crystal, moments of connection beyond mere dominance. Homelander didn't answer directly, but his expression confirmed her intuition. There had been moments brief, confusing, but undeniable when the crystal had shown him something beyond raw power. A sense of belonging to something greater than himself, a connection he had never experienced before. The crystal chose you for a reason, Shira continued. Not because you're powerful though you are, but because it sensed potential in you. Potential for something beyond what you've allowed yourself to become. A Jedi recruitment speech, Homelander asked with a hint of mockery, though it lacked his usual conviction. The Jedi Order is gone, Shira said quietly, but the Force remains. It flows through all living things, including you however you came, to this galaxy, whatever powers you possessed before. The crystal recognized this and formed a bond, however imperfect. Homelander paced the cell again, disturbed by the direction of the conversation. He had come seeking technical information about the Force, ways to increase his power through the crystal. Instead, he found himself confronting philosophical questions he had long since dismissed as irrelevant. Enough theory, he said abruptly. The Emperor wants information about Jedi enclaves, hidden sanctuaries where Force sensitives might be gathering. Give me something I can take back to him. Shira met his gaze steadily. There's a sanctuary on Deveron, an ancient Jedi temple largely abandoned but occasionally used as a waypoint by those fleeing Imperial persecution. It has no strategic value and houses no permanent residents. The Emperor already knows of it but considers it too insignificant to warrant resources for continuous monitoring. Homelander raised an eyebrow. You're actually cooperating. I'm giving you what you need without compromising what matters, Shira clarified. The information is accurate but ultimately harmless. It satisfies your immediate requirement while protecting more vital secrets. Clever, Homelander acknowledged. And if I decide it's insufficient, then you can use the crystal to take what you want by force, as you did before, Shira said calmly. But I think you won't. Not this time. Why? Because you're curious now. About the Force, about the crystal, about what it's showing you. Force domination would give you information but close off understanding. She paused, then added, and because part of you recognizes that there might be more to power than merely imposing your will on others. Homelander's expression hardened. Don't presume to know me, Jedi. I don't, Shira agreed. But the Force shows glimpses of truth, even through imperfect connections. And the truth I sense is that you're not as certain of your path as you pretend to be. For a moment, genuine anger flashed across Homelander's features. The crystal flared in response, its light taking on a deeper crimson hue. Then, with visible effort, he controlled himself. "I'll take your information to the Emperor," he said coldly. "It may buy you time, but nothing more. Your ultimate fate is sealed, regardless of what insights you offer." "Everyone's fate is sealed eventually," Shira replied. "Even yours, Imperial Protector. The question is not whether we face an end, but what we become before reaching it." Homelander reactivated the surveillance systems and summoned the guards. As they entered, he resumed his official demeanor, the mask of authority sliding seamlessly into place. "The prisoner has been cooperative," he informed them. "Continue standard containment protocols, but suspend active interrogation pending further orders from the Emperor." With that, he departed, leaving Shira to her isolation once more. But as he walked through the detention center corridors, the Kyber crystal continued its quiet pulse against his chest, and with each beat, questions echoed in his mind that had never troubled him before. Questions about the nature of power, the purpose of existence, and what it truly meant to belong to something greater than oneself.